It's testosterone poisoning.
Early testosterone imbalance expresses
there you
itself.
go. Okay.
Well,
Now,
allowing that.
what if the human race were adolescent and
Right.
we're beginning to grow beyond that? Then we don't need to have, how are we going to resolve the fact that people love war is they outgrow it.
They outgrow it.
You know, who makes up armies? Very young people. Older
Right.
people learn to be officers and stay behind.
Right.
So
Well,
there
if they
is
treated
another
people like
model that
it wasn't
human
okay.
growth may be, you know, we may be actually maturing before we extinct ourselves.
So from
Well,
a
that's-
world perspective of wanting to bring balance and peace to the planet,
Right.
we're talking about bringing in that union, like everyone understanding and getting that this is the bigger picture to
Right.
no war and to peace and harmony here is merging these two aspects of the male and the female, which is letting go of resistance.
Well, it's
the
something
war
else that
is
adolescents, when they grow up, begin to do.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's
think
the
you're saying-
energy
I think
that
you're
we're
saying the same thing.
we're wanting
Yeah, yeah.
to
Right.
heal here. This
Right.
polar opposition, this separation. There's a duality. There's two opposites opposing each other. So when
Right.
there's resistance, that's what happens. We polar opposite. And when there's no resistance, and we bring in the energy of the feminine, that acceptance and that receiving, it allows the flow to happen.
Right.
And the mind and how things have been being operated, the natural thing to do is to learn more how to be in the body. Because the body is the vibration of the feminine, the receiving.
Right.
And the mind is the male principle.
And that's what's been vilified by by Christ-Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is the body. Like, it's so extreme in Islam that they cannot even depict the human form. It's that extreme, and you look at the Calvinists, that music is a sin, that dancing is a sin. And so it's, you know, it's accepting that, being in the body. And there's, on the other side, in Shahin Budao, you have Tantra, and you have a much more holistic and accepting to being in your body and the dance and the whole, you know, this idea that what you experience is somehow bad or wrong if you experience pleasure is part of the psychosis. It's a deep, deep psychosis.
That's what Wright calls the armoring.
Exactly, the armoring.
You know, I often look to other species to try to understand my own. And if we look at as humans, if we look at our nearest relatives, it's the family of chimpanzees and the other great apes. But let's just talk about the chimpanzees because there's some pretty interesting differentiations here. There's the regular normal-sized chimpanzees who love to fight, and they basically behave like us, or we behave like them. That's probably where we came from. But there's another tribe of chimpanzees, the pygmies, the bonobos, and they settle everything with sex.
Wow.
They have sex for fun. They have sex with each other. Everybody has sex with everybody else. If there's a conflict, that's how they settle it. And this is a very intelligent way to address the problem of testosterone.
Wow.
Testosterone has to either fight it or make love to it. Those are the two things you can do with testosterone. And fighting it includes building things and doing all that, you know. Or you can take it into the flow of the feminine. The bonobos figured this out long ago, and that's how they relate, and that's why they're nearly extinct.
I think we came from them because, like the bonobos, we and the bonobos are the only mammals who don't go into heat. So we're sexually receptive all year round. So if we had to decide that we came from one or the other, it seemed like much nearer relatives.
Interesting. I'd like to segue to, I'm sorry, Jim.
No, I was just seeing, I can see why the Catholic Church is going to have some problems with our solution, which is clearly make love, not war.
Yes, exactly. It's like, what? You mean you'd rather make love than war? Something's wrong with you. I'd like to go to our Nietzsche quote can we cue up our Nietzsche quote there, Matthew? I think this is appropriate. We've been talking about looking inward, and there seems to be a lot of diversions in our culture, and there's a huge taboo about looking inward, you know, anything to do, watch TV, whatever, you know, anything to stop from looking in. So one of the hallmarks of this show is we have a Nietzsche quote every show, and this is the one that seems to be appropriate. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Oh, here we go. And when you look long into an abyss, the abyss also looks into you. And I think that's what's happening in this day and age, is all these elements that had an idea of fighting against something, they have become, in other words, they have become the Satan, the devil. And that's, if you read Revelations, that's what it talks about.
Interesting. interesting you bring that up because that goes back to the story of Adam and Eve and the original split, you know,
Right,
of the male and
right.
female energy.
Mm-hmm.
The original judgment of the other.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You know, the interesting thing about that story is God lied. The serpent never lied. The serpent said,
The serpent
you
told the
eat from
truth,
that
right,
tree, you
right.
will know the difference between good and evil.
Right.
And God said, if you eat from that tree, you will die. You know?
Right, right.
Well,
Interesting.
actually, God,
A little duplicity there built right in.
right.
Can't trust God.
It
who
was
can you
more
trust?
of a threat on God's part because, you know, in
That
that
was,
story, he didn't have big plans for mortality. He thought he was going to make these two little toy characters, and they were going to, you know, amuse him in his little vivarium out there.
Speaking of the
And-
apple.
Right, and when they turned against him, yeah,
Keep
when
talking.
they turned
We'll,
against
we'll,
him and
we'll finish
learned,
your thought there, and we have an appropriate apple.
he created death for humans. He created death and suffering by sending them out of the garden where mortality became a factor. But the serpent never lied.
Well, maybe that when it's like if you eat from it, you will know the truth. Yeah, you will go through the process of discovering, going into separation and coming back into union and really knowing the truth in 3D form.
Yeah.
There's many interpretations for that story.
Yeah.
Free will, sex. Maybe that's what began then.
Sex? It was about sex?
Well, that's one interpretation.
Right.
Maybe that's when
What do you-
the
what do you
tree
mean
was
by that?
sex, that the apple
the
was the
knowledge
sex.
of good
the
and evil.
knowledge.
That's when before people were immortal. I don't know. That's one possibility. But the serpent is an ancient symbol of the goddess, isn't it? Associated
And knowledge as well.
And knowledge.
And knowledge.
Yeah.
The flow of the creative life
Right,
force.
right.
And the thing that actually was visited first upon Adam and Eve when they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was shame. The first thing they did was they
Right.
became
Covered
ashamed
themselves,
of their bodies, and they covered their
Right.
bodies because that now they knew, you know, and that was how God knew that they knew. If they'd gone cool and just walked around naked like they were before,
Yeah,
how
they
would he
blew it,
know?
they blew it.
You know.
Let's fake them out. Don't tell them.
So then that would bring us back to why everybody is so not in their body. You know,
Right.
we've gone into our
Right.
head because there's been this non-acceptance of
Right.
the physical body.
Well, you
Yeah.
think about it when a child touches himself, the mother automatically
Right.
is
No,
very
that's
embarrassed
wrong,
and
yeah.
and I mean the most extreme patriarchist armist cultures actually have things like swaddling, where for the first 2 years the infant is totally locked in this, is like tied up to a post, and they become to the point where they actually have nosebleeds all the time because they're actually not allowed to grow. It's like foot binding for the whole baby, and then they just throw them on a table and stack them up. And so I mean that's the extreme of this kind of armoring where the body, and even into this century where German child rearing, they would, you know, tie kids to something at night so they wouldn't touch themselves accidentally.
Wow.
So that's the whole sort of mentality.
Oh. Wow, that is a juicy apple. Oh,
The body of
lovely.
knowledge.
Yes, yes, all right.
In the body. Knowledge is in the body.
New consciousness
true.
is definitely
Knows a
friendly
lot
to the
more than
body.
the head.
It's where the knowledge is stored.
It's
in the
somatic.
body.
It's where the body is a manifestation of consciousness. You know, the body is a manifestation. It's a very integrated, very highly organized, matter. I mean, if you look at it as matter, it's very highly organized, the way the brain works, and it's really sacred. That is what's a lot of what the most sacred thing is the body, and not just human body.
So perhaps-
Whales, dolphins.
Perhaps what we need then is to complete the story in the garden.
Right.
Which
yeah,
is- which is
complete
what
the
is-
story.
what is the next-
Yes,
what
what's
is-
the next?
We know that the first apple is
Right.
the knowledge of good and evil. Is the second apple the knowledge of your own divine
Divinity.
nature?
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. that
that's
is-
Coming
the-
back into union.
Right,
Yes.
it's
The
coming back to
Realization,
union. Right,
self-realization. I'm
Yes.
it. It's all
Right,
in
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I can express it. I can open and feel my body.
Right,
Yes.
right, right.
What
Feel
the
the divinity.
Sufis say is that the human heart, that God fills all creation and still fits inside the heart.
Beautiful.
So we need more apples like this.
Yeah.
More expression.
More art.
More presence.
Make art, not war. More sex. Yes.
More body.
More species.
You know,
Yes.
and from denial of the body and shame about the body becomes denial of pleasure.
Yes.
Exactly.
Creatures denied pleasure will, in experimental settings, creatures denied pleasure will languish and die.
Yeah,
They'll just
right.
die. And so when we deny ourselves pleasures, especially simple pleasures like, like food, like sexual pleasure, like good food, like, if you'll pardon my saying so, like the cannabis plant.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
I'm totally
we
with
are.
that.
It's so self-defeating, and
Right.
being self-defeating, and we being people with giant frontal lobes that can kind of think things through. That I think that the end is in sight, and that the rise of the goddess
Right.
and the rise of and the retelling of the old stories, the old stories, many of which are about the goddess, have been run through thousands of nervous systems, as Terence McKenna says.
Right, right.
They hold
It's in the
deep and
morphogenetic
abiding
field, very
truths
deeply.
for us.
It resonates.
Yeah,
It resonates.
yeah. And when you go far enough back, the stories are about the goddesses. Basically, pre-Hellenic times, with a few exceptions, most of the stories are about goddesses or have goddesses prominently featured in them.
Right, right.
So the more that we can look to the goddess and study the goddess and look to your own ancestry. Where are your people from? My people are not from the Middle East, So they have their goddesses, that's fine, but I hark to the Irish and Scottish goddesses to look at where did the rhythm of my DNA, where was the genesis of my DNA? It was in the islands, So where are my stories? Where are the stories that go all the way back? Where's the music that plucks the strings in my DNA patterns? It's in the islands. I don't even like reggae music, I think that's why.